The evening had fallen quietly over the city, its towering buildings casting long shadows across the empty streets. Barron Trump, tucked into the corner of a dimly lit café, found himself staring into his cup of coffee, lost in thought. The world outside seemed to move in a blur as his mind churned with questions that refused to be answered. It had been one of those days, one where the weight of expectations pressed on him, where every decision, every look from others, felt like a quiet judgment. For a moment, he let himself sink into the quiet of the cafe, hoping to escape the constant hum of responsibility that followed him everywhere. But there was something stirring inside him tonight, something restless, something that refused to stay buried. The door jingled sharply as a couple entered, their voices low but distinct. Barron didn't immediately look up, but the tension in the air soon caught his attention. The man was speaking sharply, his words cutting through the atmosphere like a blade, and the woman across from him looked uncomfortable. Barron could see her trying to say something, but it was clear her words were drowned by the storm that raged within the man. She spoke softly, but her voice trembled, almost pleading. At first, Barron couldn't make out exactly what was happening. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions. After all, relationships had their complexities. He knew that from personal experience. But as the man's voice grew louder, sharper, and more condescending, Barron felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Why can't you just get it right?" the man snapped. "You always do this. You're worthless." The words struck like a slap, and Barron's breath hitched as he watched the woman flinch. She tried to answer, but her voice barely reached above a whisper, as though she feared the next words that might come out of his mouth. She was clearly trying to calm the situation, but Barron could see that no matter how hard she tried, she was only sinking deeper into the storm of his anger. Barron shifted in his seat. He was no stranger to tension. He had grown up in the center of it. But something about this was different. It wasn't just the man's harsh words. It was the helplessness in the woman's eyes, the way she sat there, shrinking away from the fury before her. For a moment, Barron wondered if he should just turn away. Maybe it wasn't his place to get involved. After all, he didn't know these people. It wasn't his fight, was it? But then something shifted inside him, something deeper than the desire for peace, deeper than the comfort of silence. It was a moral pull, an undeniable voice within him that said, "You can't just sit there and do nothing. You have to stand up." The man's voice cracked like thunder, pulling Barron back into the present. "You always make excuses," he shouted, slamming his hand onto the table with such force that the cups rattled. "Pathetic. I don't even know why I bother with you anymore." Barron's eyes narrowed and his hands clenched around his coffee cup. He couldn't understand why it affected him so much. This wasn't his business, but it was. Something inside him knew that. He could either walk away, let this happen, or he could be the one to change it. Barron stood up. His chair scraped loudly across the floor, and the noise cut through the tension like a blade. The woman looked up, her eyes wide as if she hadn't expected anyone to intervene. Barron walked toward their table, his heart pounding in his chest, but his mind was clear. He had made his decision. "Hey," Barron said, his voice calm but firm. "I think you should leave her alone." The man's head snapped toward him, his eyes narrowing in immediate hostility. For a moment, the cafe seemed to hold its breath. Barron stood tall, unwavering. The man's expression twisted into a sneer. "What did you say?" the man asked, his voice low and menacing, stepping forward as if to challenge Barron. Barron didn't flinch. "I said, leave her alone," he repeated, his tone now harder, more insistent. "No one deserves to be spoken to like that." The woman's eyes widened at Barron's words, but she didn't say anything. She was still visibly shaken, as though unsure if this was real, unsure if someone would really stand up for her. The man scoffed, his chest puffing out. "What's it to you? You think you can tell me how to treat her?" His words dripped with contempt, but Barron stood his ground. He could feel the man's anger rising, and he knew this wasn't going to be easy. But he wasn't backing down. Barron leaned slightly forward, his voice steady. "It's about doing the right thing. You don't have to treat her like this. Whatever problems you have, they're yours, not hers." For a long moment, the man stared at Barron, weighing him, sizing him up. The air felt thick with the tension of the moment. The woman was still silent, her face pale, but Barron could see something shifting in her eyes, an almost imperceptible change. She was no longer alone in this battle. Finally, the man spat on the ground in disgust. "I don't have time for this," he muttered, turning on his heel and storming out of the cafe, leaving the woman behind. Barron stayed where he was, watching him go, his heart still hammering in his chest. His hands were slightly trembling, but he felt a strange calm settle over him. He had done something, even if it had only been a small thing, even if it had only been words. The woman stared at Barron for a moment, her eyes searching his face as though she were trying to understand what had just happened. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely a whisper, but the gratitude in it was unmistakable. Barron nodded, not sure what else to say. "It was nothing," he replied quietly, his voice still steady. "It's just what needed to be done." The silence between them hung in the air, and for a moment, Barron thought she might say something else. But instead, she simply stood up and walked away, her shoulders slightly straighter than before. Barron watched her leave, feeling a quiet sense of satisfaction. He wasn't looking for applause. He wasn't looking for anything. But in that moment, he realized something important, that sometimes doing the right thing meant standing up, even when it was hard, even when it was easier to walk away. As he walked out of the cafe and into the cool night air, the weight of his decision settled in. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't looking to be. But sometimes doing the right thing was all that mattered. The night had changed him, and maybe, just maybe, it had changed her too. From Barron's decision to stand up in the face of injustice, we learn that sometimes the right thing to do isn't always the easiest. It's easy to walk away when we see someone struggling or being mistreated. It's comfortable to pretend we didn't notice. But Barron's choice reminds us that true courage lies in standing firm, in the face of discomfort, when doing nothing would be the simpler route. How many times have we chosen silence over action, thinking it wasn't our place to intervene? Barron didn't seek recognition or reward. His actions were driven by an inner sense of what was right. In those moments, we are reminded that our actions have the power to make a difference, no matter how small they may seem. Could we too be brave enough to act when faced with injustice? When faced with cruelty, silence should never be an option. Barron's courage to step in and defend the woman teaches us that sometimes all it takes is one person to change the course of someone's day or even their life. What would have happened if no one had stepped in? What if the moment had passed without someone taking a stand? The lesson is clear. Sometimes the world needs us to stand up, not because we're obligated, but because we have the ability to make things better for others. Are we willing to be that one person? Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.